Moving on, Dan Hunt, will you please introduce our speaker and his guest?
Thank you, Margaret. We have two speakers today, Lee McGrath and his client, NAN BAILLY. Lee worked for more than 20 years in corporate finance at General Motors and other corporations, including Jostens, where he was vice president and treasurer. Then Lee suffered a midlife crisis. Unlike most men facing this crisis, he did not buy an expensive sports car. No, Lee engaged in even more extravagant and some may say dangerous behavior. At age 45, he went to law school. After graduating from Willie Mitchell College of Law, Lee opened the Minnesota office of the Institute of Justice in 2004. The Institute for Justice litigates to limit the size and scope of government power and to ensure that all Americans have the right to control their own destinies as free and responsible members of society by combining cutting-edge litigation, sophisticated media relations, and strategic research. Institute for Justice has litigated over 300 cases, including 9 before the US Supreme Court, only losing one case. Along with Lee, as I said, is Nan BAILLY. She is the owner of Alexis Bailey Vineyard. That was the lead plaintiff in one of the Institute for Justice's lawsuit, along with Next Chapter Winery. Lee, thank you for joining us. And Nan, thank you for joining us. The microphone's all yours.
Well, Dan, thank you. And it is a pleasure to see many friends. And also I applaud your chapter of the Rotary Club. Next Wednesday, you'll be celebrating your 116th anniversary. And it's impressive to see a civil society so alive as it is with you and the other over 1 million members of Rotarians worldwide. So I applaud you and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the work of the Institute for Justice. The Institute for Justice is a public interest law firm. That means we don't charge our clients any money, and we litigate and lobby to rein in the excesses of government. And that is done at the federal level, the state level, and the municipal level. As Dan said, we've been to the Supreme Court 9 times. Our most famous case is the one that we lost, dealing with eminent domain. Suzette Kelo was our client, and we lost at the Supreme Court regarding the power of the city of New London to take property by eminent domain. But the public reaction to that was so great that 45 states have changed their laws, including Minnesota, to protect against excessive use of eminent domain. The role of public interest law firms like the Institute for Justice, like the ACLU, the Beckett Fund, and the Alliance Defending Freedom is increasing in importance. In part is because of the decline of the media. The media is now a cheerleading institution on one side or the other. The real check on government is now coming from public interest law firms. So what I'd like to do in the spirit of tequila, scotch, and scotch this morning is to invite Nan BAILLY to come on the screen, and then we'll start by showing the video, and then I'll turn it over to Nan to talk about her case, a case here in Minnesota. Nan is the owner of the oldest winery in Minnesota, and for a long time, the state violated her constitutional rights, but no longer. And so, Dan, if we could roll the video, we'll then turn it to Nan, and you'll be the beneficiaries of her great insights about what it's like to litigate a constitutional case.
All right. Okay, Dan, am I playing the video?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I will stop this share and share here. Here. And Are you seeing the video?
No.
Okay. I apologize. Just a second here. All right.
Mary, do you want Lee to try to run it from his?
Let me try this again.
There we go.
There you go. So Mary, just hit the little sideways triangle and it'll start the video, I think.
Right. Right. The problem is I'm not seeing it.
Or you don't see it on your screen?
Right.
It blinked.
Here we go.
We would like to have the right to produce wines of our choosing. We're not asking for anything that other wineries don't have. We would just like an equal playing field. My name is Nan BAILLY. I own a winery called Alexis Bailey Vineyard. We're located in Hastings, Minnesota. My father founded our winery in 1973 with
Okay, are you hearing that?
Yes.
the idea of producing wines from Minnesota grown grapes. As a young child, I had a lot of interest in what my father was doing. I did an internship in France to learn about wine. And when my father passed away in 1990, I came to own the winery and have been making wine here ever since. I sometimes joke I'm the hardest working winemaker in the world, given the conditions I'm growing grapes under. My father used to always tell me that I should make wine that I like just in case I do have to drink it. And I think I have a good palate and I make wine to sort of my tastes. I think I'm a pretty thoughtful winemaker. The key to producing a good wine would be in blending. It would be the sort of alchemy of mixing wines together to create the perfect harmony, the perfect balance. A lot of the grapes that we grow in Minnesota, because we have a cooler climate, tend to be higher in acidity, which is not a style of wine that I like to make because I don't think it's a very approachable style, and I think most consumers also reject acidic wines. So to get that proper balance, it's advantageous for me to be able to bring in fruit from a climate, say like California, where it's very hot and they may have low acid. I can blend the two together to find exactly the perfect balance I'm looking for in my wine. In the state of Minnesota, we've been required to produce 51% of our wines from locally grown grapes. From our vineyard, we could purchase grapes from other vineyards in the state. Unfortunately, we have a finite number of vineyards that are actually producing. So it only allows me to bring in 49% of my total production from out of state. It is restrictive on my ability to produce as much wine and the types of wine, maybe more importantly, that I would like to produce. That choice should be mine to make, not something that would be dictated by the government. The consequences of having to produce wine under the Minnesota Farm Winery Act means that the wine industry in Minnesota will always be very small boutique wineries because we don't have the ability to expand beyond what we can produce here. We don't believe the law is necessary for us. We have a lot of interest in growing grapes. We have a lot of interest in the new hybrids that are being developed at the University of Minnesota. Having the vineyard surrounding the winery is an important part of attracting customers to our winery. The bucolic nature, the serenity of the vineyard contributes a lot to the atmosphere that makes people from the city want to come out to our winery. So we don't need the motivation of having to grow our own grapes. We already have it. I've long been aware of the constitutional issues with the restrictions on me as a winemaker. and have felt that it was unfair. I should be able to do what so many other wineries have the freedom to do, and I shouldn't be restricted just because I'm in the state of Minnesota. The Institute for Justice works with constitutional issues, and we're very happy that they've teamed up with us to challenge this law.
Thank you so much. And now let me turn it over to one of my very, very favorite clients, Nan BAILLY.
Thank you so much for having me. I think that the video really did sort of lay out the premise for our case. I have a brother who's a lawyer, and he long told me that the law was unconstitutional and that one day he would represent me. But as is the case when your brother is your lawyer, that often doesn't happen. So when Lee approached me from the Institute for Justice, I was all ready to go with the suit. One of my frustrations with the law was, well, there were many, but one of them, the main one that maybe I'd like to emphasize was that it never recognized how difficult it is for us to grow grapes in Minnesota. So when the farm winery law was first enacted in 1980, there were hardly any vineyards in the state of Minnesota. We understood that the law was meant to promote agriculture, you know, a new product, growing grapes, but there weren't really any grapes for us to grow. As you know from this past week, we get pretty cold here in the wintertime. I don't expect that my grapes are going to survive this winter. I really don't expect I'm going to have a crop this next year. So what's a winery to do? Not be in Minnesota, be in California? Well, I'm a Minnesota girl, and you know, my father founded the winery here in Minnesota. I like being here, but having my hands tied by these laws was frustrating. Now, that being said, the challenge to the law was never about me being able to bring in grapes from out of state, because I always had the right to do that. I always had the right to file an affidavit with the state that said I can't produce 51% from my grapes. Give me a waiver. Well, they would give me a waiver. Now, the very fact that that affidavit existed, I think, lends folly to the law. But I was criticized a lot in the press, and I think it's why whenever I talk about the case that I really do want to emphasize that my intention was never about being able to make as much California wine in Minnesota as I wanted. That being said, wineries all over the world buy their fruit from wherever the winemaker wants to source it to make the wines that they want. So for me, I really don't have any choice to source from someplace else because, like I said, this winter we've hit 20 below now almost every night for the past 10 days. That's going to be pretty tough for my buds to make it through. So if I don't have a crop this year, I can't stay in business the following year because I won't have any wine to make. So thank you to Lee and the Institute for Justice that really helped me see this through, that we were able to succeed and have the law changed. That being said, I don't really expect too many changes for me. I don't have to file that affidavit anymore. And I don't have to worry about losing my crop and not having any wine to make.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So Mary, could you please take down the video so we can see the speakers? I'm still seeing just a still from that last slide of the video, and I'm not sure if that's helpful right now, but could you do that? And then thank you. Great.
Well,
sorry about that, Nan.
Well, Dan, let's open the floor to questions about Nan's case, and of course her winery in Hastings, not too far from Edina, and worthy of a visit. And any questions that members might have about the other work that the Institute for Justice does.
Obviously. So Nan, thank you. If the members have questions, please put them on the chat screen and I'll read them off to Nan. So Nan, if I understand so when your father started the winery, the law didn't exist?
Correct.
Okay.
So our winery actually predates the farm winery law. So when the farm winery law was enacted, it took away the privileges that we prior had to that. The farm winery license was also written not by the winery associations, but by the Grape Growers Association. I found that to be extraordinarily offensive, that it was written to benefit the grape growers and not the wineries. And it was long overdue to be rewritten.
And you were never denied when you filed the affidavit. They would let you import the wines, but they always had obviously the power to say no if they wanted to.
Well, that's just it. If I have to file the affidavit and prove my case, um, right, it certainly implies that they could tell me no. Now, that they never did doesn't really make any difference. I respected the law and I ran my business according to the law. I made an effort to make 51% of my wines from Minnesota grapes. In all the years that we've been making wine, going back to 1978, well, I guess the law in 1980, I've only filed the affidavit a half a dozen times. It always was my intention to respect the law and make Minnesota wine, as difficult as it was, and an amazing financial burden on me for those years when I did lose so much of my crop and the cap that I had on the amount of wine that I was able to make. That's why I was saying is that, we started our winery the same time that a winery in Wisconsin started called Wollersheim. They make over 200,000 gallons of wine a year. I barely make 10,000. That's the implication of the law.
That it limits your overall production.
Correct.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions here, but I just want to ask you a question. I'm in real estate development. I deal with government all the time. I'm at odds with government most of the time, which is just the nature of it. So is this really is this the only issue you've had with government? Is there other regulation that either locally or nationally that you have to deal with?
Well, we produce alcohol, so we are highly regulated. We're regulated like you can't believe the paperwork that I have to do to prove that mostly it's about paying alcohol excise taxes. Well, I'll just give you an example. Right now, I'm fighting the state of Minnesota because we have to file excise taxes both at the federal and the state level. We have to keep two completely different sets of books. The federal government is on gallons, the state's on liters. We don't have the same tax brackets. We don't have the same filing regulations. So we literally have to keep two separate books to file our taxes. At the end of the year, I got a stack of papers like this just to file my excise taxes. The state recently just denied us the ability to pay on a quarterly basis. I have to file with the state of Minnesota every month. Well, that's just one issue of bureaucracy.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you many more, but we'll just stick maybe to the one
Okay.
today.
Lee, I've got a question here asking that you explain what the constitutional issue is that was behind the lawsuit.
Dan, I'd be happy to. And taking you back 240 some odd years, you might it's easy to remember that one of the problems with the Articles of Confederation was that there were tariffs between the colonies. And so an important component of the Constitution, it was and still is today to create a free trade zone among the states, that there should not be barriers to commerce at borders. And so the Commerce Clause in the Constitution has been interpreted to create a doctrine known as the Dormant Commerce Clause. And that prohibits the state of Minnesota from favoring in-state producers over out-of-state producers. So the grape growers, NAN was at the intersection of that out-of-state growers in California, in Oregon, in Canada, in France were disadvantaged relative to in-state growers. And that favoritism, and that's a big word, sometimes it's called protectionism, but that favoritism is at the core of a constitutional violation.
What can you just take a few minutes here and walk us through the lawsuit, where it was filed, where it was argued, and then and we know the outcome, but how it was written up.
Nan, would you like to do that, or?
No, I think that that's more of a legal.
All right, very, very good. So,
Commentary.
all right, very, very good. So, since we were suing under the federal Constitution, under a violation of the Commerce Clause and the doctrine of the Dormant Commerce Clause, we could go to federal court, even though NAN is a Minnesotan and the Department of Public Safety that regulates her industry is a Minnesota organization. So we went into federal court. And so we had another vineyard, next chapter, along with NAN. They were the plaintiffs. And in Minnesota, and under federal law, you have to sue a person. So we sued the commissioner. The commissioner ended up to be our friend, Mr. Harrington, finally. But so we filed in district court, and the district court ruled against us initially that we did not have that on a motion to dismiss. We then appealed up to the 8th Circuit, and the 8th Circuit reversed the district court, saying that we did have standing and our claims were worthy of greater scrutiny. And then the district court, having seen the enlightenment coming from the Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit, reversed and ruled in favor of NAN. And so this was roughly a 3-year venture in federal court.
What it leads me down this path. You don't charge your clients, so how do you go about raising funds to support the staff and all the other items you do for your lawsuits?
Well, we are very fortunate. We have about 8,000 donors that support our lawsuits, support our ability to work with NAN and similarly situated clients across the types of lawsuits that we file. They give us approximately $25 million a year, and that allows us to employ 60 lawyers and about 40 staff people. We currently have that funding source has allowed us this year to grow to the point where we have 80 lawsuits across the country currently active.
Another question here from a member who asks, do you work with Professor Morris Kleiner of the Humphrey School of Public Affairs on licensing regulation? Apparently it means something to you from that smile on your face. If so, can you describe issues with licensing regulation?
Professor Kleiner is a dear friend and and we worked very closely with him addressing the biggest labor market issue in the state of Minnesota and nationally. Occupational licensing is, Morris is the dean on a worldwide basis of this issue of occupational licensing. Today in the United States, it is twice the size of union participation. About 20% of all Americans need a license before they can enter the labor market. By contrast, only about 10% are members of unions, and less than 2% earn the minimum wage. So this is the biggest institution in labor today. Secondly, it is an unnecessary institution. And Rotarians can appreciate this. You are entrepreneurs. Your reputation is much more important than a piece of paper hanging on your wall, like the unnecessary pieces of paper hanging on my wall behind me. Your reputation is the best consumer protection, and your competitors do a far better job of keeping good and ethical practices in your industries than a board of X or a board of Y. And so we are big advocates of trying to reduce the use of occupational licensing because it clogs up labor markets.
Nan, I want to go back to you because in addition to the lawsuit, just having someone talking to our members about making wine is a unique opportunity. So in this winter, which kind of reminds me of the winter of 13-14 when we had a number of cold spells. So what happens to your crop, and what's the long-term implication to your business and the ability to make wine in the years ahead?
If I were to depend upon my vineyard for the sole source of my fruit, I couldn't stay in business. It takes a year to make wine, so I'm always looking a year ahead with my production. So we make wine in the fall. Obviously, sometime in the next month, we'll be going into the vineyard and testing buds and testing our wood. I won't know until probably June, maybe even July, how much damage I might have, because the damage can come from the buds, it can come from the canes, it can come from the roots, it can come from the trunk, and they all kind of show up at different times as to just what the extent of that would be. So it's important for me as my business plan to know that I'm going to have to get in some fruit from elsewhere. So we're kind of planning for that already for this fall.
Okay. Just have a minute left. If you could, because these are parts of the stories I love the best. How did your father start the winery?
Well, I always like to say that when you have 6 children, you sort of have built-in labor to live out your fantasy. So that's pretty much what my father did. Put us 6 kids. We grew up not too far from Morningside. I know the area very well. I grew up in Uptown. And my father would throw us in the station wagon every weekend and take us down to the farm in Hastings. And I'm the one kid who stayed, who stuck it out there. And the rest went to law school.
Fabulous. Well, Lee and Nan, thank you very much for your time and presenting to us this morning. A fascinating story. Margaret, I will turn it over to you to close the meeting.
Good. Thanks, Dan.
Margaret, if I could just interrupt and thank Dan and the team for the great organizational skills, and invite you to look at our website, ij.org, for if you want to see Nan's video again, and some of the other work that we're doing in Minnesota and across the country. Thank you.
Margaret, if I could say one more thing, not only does Mary Brindle do a great job, but when the co-chair screws up and doesn't give correct directions on who is going to play the video, she makes it look very easy. So Mary, thank you, and my apologies.
No problem.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I know it's hard when you've got all of us sitting here watching you. So believe me, I know it's hard. So anyways, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lee and Nan, for joining us today. Please consider joining us again in the future. Check out our website as well, at the Edina Morningside Rotary Club. We have a lot of interesting speakers coming up. Next week, we have Lindsay Wimmer from the Star Legacy Foundation. Star Legacy supports individuals and families who have suffered a loss in the family. Sorry, stillbirth. That's the loss. Stillbirth in their family. If you don't know somebody that has, I'm sure they're not too far away from you. But so please invite people to come. It's really important information to know what's going on in that area of life. So thank you. And then also make sure you check out the website for signing up for the State of the City event, which is next Thursday on the 25th. Again, you can attend either via Zoom or in person at the Edina Country Club. So, all right, thank you to everybody and for all the work that we do as Rotary. As you all know, we usually finish with the final panel that shows how many opportunities open up to us every single day. Just look for them. They are there. Have a great week. Stay warm and safe. Thank you.